I want to talk to Joe. Joe's in Canada. We have to take the Canadian caller.
Woo.
Welcome to the Canada Hour, Joe.
Yeah, it's a bit of a different time zone. I think it's 6:45 right now. So
you're aware that Canada has multiple time zones, right?
And Paul and I are in two different ones.
Yeah, I know. Different than you guys, I think, right now. I think we're 1 hour ahead of you guys right now.
We're in different time zones, but that doesn't matter.
It's 7:45 p.m. here for the record. I'm in Nova Scotia. But yeah, go ahead.
We're good.
Oh, 7:45. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm in Ontario right now, so that's why it's like an hour ago.
We won't hold that against you. That's fine. Go right ahead.
Hoping you guys are having a good year. Happy New Year, basically.
Thank you.
So I think I just wanted to talk about one thing about just mocking religions. I think on the call screen there, I just submitted it. It's just about, I mentioned drawing Prophet Muhammad, drawing sexualized images of Hindu gods, and just other behaviors that mock religion. And I was hoping we can have a discussion around that, because I noticed a lot of atheists, they do sometimes mock religions and, say it is, meant to offend and meant to be as free speech. And I was wondering why that is.
Okay.
Can we talk about that? Is that okay?
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid thing to discuss. So when it comes to the drawings of Prophet Muhammad and sexualized drawings of Hindu gods, I think there's a specific point that's being made that maybe us in, over in North America don't relate to as much, because we have a bit of privilege here in the way that we have freedom of religion and freedom from religion, so that we're not subject to persecution for blaspheming. Now, there are other parts of the world where people are jailed or killed or have aspects of their lives dramatically destroyed for blaspheming. So when people do these types of things, it's an attempt to offend on purpose, to draw attention to the reactions that take place and what threats are being made surrounding those activities, and that those activities should never, if you draw the Prophet Muhammad or you draw a sexualized Hindu goddess, that even though you may think it distasteful, even though it's not something that I would do personally, but I understand the motivations behind it. The motivations behind it are a sign of solidarity with the people who, if they did do that, would lose their freedom or their lives, to bring attention to it so that more people are aware that that is the case and how ridiculous it is. And that even though you may find it distasteful, not like that person, not want to be around that person, the person should never be subject to prosecution or death threats as a result. And sometimes the only way to get a lot of attention around a subject matter like this is to really get people riled up. So some people do that as a form of activism in order to prove the point that people are getting riled up and that they do get death threats and that that's unacceptable.
And I don't know if you're familiar with my work, Joe.
I guess go ahead.
I don't know if you're familiar with my work, Joe, but I'm a former Christian, and most of the really important people in my lives, most of my friends for most of my life, and a lot of my family members, they are all still Christians. And so when I do my activism work, I very much try to speak to the Christian that I was. So I don't use foul language, for example. And there's lots of things that I try to do to make myself palpable to Christians so that they will listen to what I want to say. And I think this would go across other religions. However, if I'm honest with myself about my own deconversion, parts of it were listening to arguments, but parts of it, just as Shannon said, was when I heard George Carlin or people saying things about Christianity that shocked and offended me, I was forced then to think about, why am I shocked and offended, and should I be? And different people come to different decisions based on various things. It's always some combination of ideas and emotions. And to say that that no one should ever try to talk about or utilize those emotional tools, of which mockery is one, that is very short-sighted and may well mean that we're not reaching some of the people that we want to reach with our message. Would you disagree with that?
So I see where like you guys are kind of coming from. I do want to make a bit of a distinction, I guess, between blasphemy, because one thing that you mentioned and also Shannon mentioned is the idea that this notion that by blaspheming you're going to lose your freedoms in certain parts of the world, and mockery is like a way to assert that, you know, that freedom. I can kind of see maybe where you're coming from, but I just tend to disagree with some behaviors, if I can just mention that. By the way, my connection's a little weak, so if I just abruptly hang up, it's probably just because of my Wi-Fi. So if that actually happens by accident, like, I apologize.
Okay. You understand.
Hang up or rage quit. Okay. So one thing that so in certain parts of the world, I'll give an example, like Saudi Arabia, for example, because I do come from a Muslim background. If, for example, you are caught like not praying the 5 prayers in certain communities, or you are caught not doing certain things, then you can be jailed for blasphemy. Or if you express something, maybe even in the 17th century or 16th century, when people believed that the earth was flat, and, you know, you said that the earth was round, you could be charged for blasphemy. So those things, I understand that, you know, like blaspheming in that way is like, you know, like you can be prosecuted for that. But I guess what I don't understand is like, even like drawing Prophet Muhammad or the sexualized like Hindu images, it's like, doesn't that like, I just don't see the point of that, right? It's just that like, doesn't that kind of hurt the atheist cause? Like it repels religious people away from the, you know, atheist religious, you know, discourse, which is something I'm a big fan of, by the way. It's like, you know, I am a Muslim, but one thing about me is that like, I don't like being in an echo chamber, which is what a lot of religious communities are kind of in. Like I want to talk to other people, including atheists and quote unquote, like people from other faiths, like unbelievers. Like that's what they say in my community sometimes. So doesn't that kind of turn people away from the discourse, or like make religious people not want to talk to or have that open conversation that we want, you know?
I'm going to do something that may surprise you and agree with you a little bit. Okay. So you may have heard me say initially it's not something that I would do. And one of the reasons that it's not something that I would do is because I enjoy engaging in these types of conversations, and I want people to feel open to approach me, right? I want them to know that I'm interested in hearing what they believe and expressing to them why I believe what I believe, and having, you know, intelligent conversations about science and philosophy and theology, and helping to expand my mind and maybe contribute to the public discourse, right? So I understand that I take a specific posture in order for that to be something that people are willing to want to do with me. And I also recognize that if I engage in the behavior that you just mentioned, then it's going to send a message that I am, you know, I'm not approachable. I'm more interested in mocking you, right? I understand that. But what you maybe don't understand is, or are conflating, is that you see perhaps atheists or atheist activism as this sort of monolith. And I don't think that's the case. Like, so those, I've stated my goals. The people that are doing these other types of things, they have a subset of goals. Now, I understand that you're looping them in. So you're saying, well, they're atheists and activists, and you're atheist and you're an activist. So essentially you're the same kind of person. So if they engage in this behavior, I'm going to ascribe it to people like you. I'm going to assume maybe the same sort of motivations, and I'm going to assume that maybe people like you don't want to have conversations with me. I understand that, but also a good friend of mine is actually, I'm going to get emotional. A good friend of mine is in Tanzania right now and is under arrest for Trump. Her name is Zara, for trumped up charges because she went home to visit her family, and she's an ex-Muslim activist, and they called her in for blasphemy, and it ended up trumping up a couple of charges and took her passport and won't let her go home now, and she may have to go to jail because she's an activist.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
So
I'm so sorry to hear that.
We have a specific set of privileges here, right? Where we can prioritize conversations. I have the privilege to be able to prioritize having conversations as my goal. There are people who don't have that privilege. They're trying to prioritize freedom for the people that they love and for themselves. They're trying to prioritize an end to persecution for people that they know are being killed and jailed in places because these types of things aren't allowed. And sometimes the only way to draw attention to them is to do them. Because if you sweep them under the rug, you can't see the reactions and you can't see the results. So they need to do it so that you can see the reactions and the results, so that people like us can recognize that we have a privileged perspective right now by making conversations a priority. Like, I know that my friend Zara would love to be able to have conversations about intellectual dialogues be her priority. But right now, she's trying to get home and they took her passport because she's an ex-Muslim who speaks about it publicly. So I find it very, very privileged for us to have these conversations as though doing something like this shuts down the atheist community, and that particular type of activism shines poorly on me is what I'm seeing, or people like me, and that I should maybe, I don't know, keep my community in check or whatever. You have to focus on why that's the case. If it's offending you to see it, think about how offensive it would be to be in jail because you did it. That's the point that they're trying to make. And it matters because it happens. And I have a friend it's happening to. So, sorry.
No, of course. Again, I just want to preface by saying I'm really sorry that this happened to your friend. Even as like a Muslim, I would like oppose blasphemy laws. I don't think anybody should be jailed for expressing whatever religious affiliation or lack of. So I'm sorry that this happened to your friend. I really am. And no, you are right. Like in North America, we have the freedom to express any of our thoughts and emotions without being jailed for them. So I definitely can see that. I guess it was kind of like where I was kind of coming from was more just that the idea of just like mocking certain like beliefs for the shock value, it seems like. So
it's not for the shock. It might seem like that to you, but they'll stop drawing the pictures when you stop killing us and putting us in jail.
Well, but Shannon, you mentioned about the monolith, right? That sometimes I may think you guys are a monolith. And okay, if that's a very valid point, maybe that's something I didn't consider. I can't just paint all atheists under one brush. I think it's just something I've noticed that. But then again, Shannon, I'm just saying this in the most respectful way. Isn't you just saying when you'll stop when I stop killing you guys? Kind of the same.
Oh my, you know what? You're absolutely right. And I owe you an apology for saying that. I meant you, and I just did the same thing that you did. You're absolutely right. I owe you an apology. I'm in an emotional state and I shouldn't have said that. I should have said they and taken it away from you because this isn't your fault. So I'm so sorry if I made you feel that way. And I do owe you an apology. So I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. And yeah, of course, I understand. I'm really sorry that, again, something like this really did happen to your friend. I guess the thing is because I've been in religious communities and I've seen some of the more extreme sides where they vilify anyone who's like a disbeliever. And I'm talking about like religious, like communities that are in that like state. I'm not saying that this is all religious communities or even almost religious Muslim communities. That's not what I mean. So basically I've seen like more on the extreme side of people just vilifying unbelievers and especially atheists because they conflate atheists with, they're, like the devil has them and they're just trying to drag you to hell with the rest of the unbelievers. So like, I think that's nonsense. But on the other hand, it's just that when I see atheists, like, like some atheists, I shouldn't conflate, again, all atheists.
Hashtag not all atheists.
Sorry, like when I see some atheists like maybe drawing like deliberate pictures of like Muhammad or deliberate pictures of like the Hindu gods or like having sex or something like that. Or and I don't know if this is a good analogy, but even some people drawing swastikas on like Jewish books. Isn't that kind of the opposite? Like the other extreme? It's just that's kind of where I was thinking about. Because I want discourse, right? I love, like, as a Muslim, I love talking with you guys. I watch your show quite a bit. I may not always agree with every single thing that you guys say, but I love the discourse. And it's just that I feel with mocking certain religions just for the sake of mocking religions instead of focusing more on, that activism, like repelling the blasphemy laws or making sure that atheists have a safe space to voice their atheism, or people aren't persecuted for their lack of faith. Isn't that kind of where we should prioritize, which I would support as a religious person?
So I'm with you. I understand what you're saying. I really, really understand what you're saying. And not everybody has the same goals. I'm all about your actions aligning with your goals, right? So my goal is, like I said, more open and honest discourse, and to be able to be approached and hear people and feel heard by people and have them feel heard by me. So I'm going to enact different behaviors as a result. If somebody else's goal is to draw attention to these types of laws by essentially breaking them to prove the point that they should be trivial and they shouldn't result in what they result in, I can understand that too. It's not necessarily a behavior that I would engage in because I have different goals. Now, you have different goals as well. You have goals that are similar to mine, it sounds like. So you probably wouldn't wander around saying crappy stuff about atheists. But there are theists, there are Muslims, there are Christians, there are Hindus that do those things, right? So those are the people that I would, if I'm interested in discourse and dialogue, and they don't comport to the way that I want to engage, I just wouldn't engage with them. I wouldn't attempt to call another atheist and say, hey, shouldn't you get these guys under control or publicly chastise them? Because it does take all kinds in activism. It's I nor you could stand up in with any authority and say, we know the way to be an activist. There is this way to be an activist, and any other way that you are an activist doesn't comport to the way that I feel is best. Because if there's anything that I think reality demonstrates, is that it takes all kinds of approaches because everybody's motivated by, understands, or is affected by a different type of behavior. So just doing my approach is potentially not going to reach the people that somebody who does a more sort of salacious approach does in order to get a reaction. That may get more eyes than what I do. Look at my channel. I've only got 26,000 subscribers. I don't do clickbaity stuff, right? If I did clickbaity stuff, more people would probably come into my channel, but that's not what motivates me. So I make different choices. Is that necessarily a smart choice? Maybe I should. Maybe I'd get more eyes in front of me so that I could deliver the message. Maybe that's their motivation, is that they know more people are going to see it and come, and then they can hear the actual message afterwards. We just don't know. So I got a little bit emotional, and I apologize because it's something that's personally affected me this past week. So I apologize for that entering into the conversation, but I don't know how it couldn't based on the conversation, just because it is my reality right now. I again owe you an apology for ascribing fault for what's happening to Zara and people like her to you. I did not mean to do that. It was a slip of the tongue. So I hope that this benefits. I feel like we could go in circle for a long time, and we are pretty much at the close of the show, so I'm going to have to let you go. And thank you for calling, Joe. I feel like this was a fruitful conversation, and it's one I'll listen back to because there's probably things I can learn about listening to you with more open ears and less emotional ones. Okay?
Sure.
And yay, Canada. Go Team Canada.
And please, Janet, no need to apologize for getting emotional.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You know us. We like to say sorry.
You gotta apologize.
Thank you.